second session in the webinar series, Google for Agencies. Today, exciting sites with Lightspeed analysis, the right tools to dive deep into data to identify performance opportunities. I'm your host, Jack Nichols, and I primarily work with agencies. The content of this webinar would be relevant to most online marketers or web analysts as well. Today, we'll review features such as complex and advanced segmentation as customer reports. It assumes you watched or mastered the contents of the first session, introducing the new version of Google Analytics. Or not familiar with the new interface, you need to review that video. You can by searching Analytics Agencies on YouTube and looking for Introduce a New Version of Google Analytics, or the short link on the top right side of the page. For purposes, that is goo.gl/uppercase 5 L X. That meets once every 3 weeks at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. You see the series dates on the right side, but if you would like to sign up to receive an email reminder before each session, you follow the short link on the left and complete the registration form. And that is goo.gl/uppercase J lowercase h. To help you understand how to dig or drill through data in GA, effectively understand and apply the concept of visitor segments, the advanced toolkit within GA, such as customer reports and advanced segment others, to identify and again better understand your most valuable or least valuable user segments. Just what a segment is. Within your data that one or more characteristics in common. So you can see an example in the upper left. The character is the one of region, and the one that we are identifying as an individual segment is California. Those regions or states is, but if the upper right side, it could be a combination of characteristics. And in our example, we've chosen the segment visitors who are from California and also came from Google as opposed to some other traffic source. And you can see that that segment is considerably smaller, about half that of the one of California. Almost any number of dimensions that we are grouping visitors by. So you can see in the bottom left example that this we're looking at is those from California who came as opposed to any other traffic source, and it's a specific monitor size. And you can see that visitor segment is considerably smaller than the general one of California, and of course much, much smaller than your all visitor group. Important in any of these cases, as you slice your data into smaller and smaller segments, you are able to better identify their performance and evaluate whether they're overperforming or underperforming compared to other equally defined segments. This core concept within analysis. If you have a set of visitors that represent all of your web analytics, that is your data set. Analysis is the process of looking at different ways to analyze that data. Again, it's the process of identifying dimensions along which you segment. As visitor segments, indexes becomes more distinct. So it means that your California traffic has a higher conversion rate along the goal that you've set than your traffic. Both of the segments, and the analysis says that California does better than New York as far as conversion rate. Upon analysis, it could be that it's actually California CPC traffic that lower conversion rate than CPC traffic. The dimension of and the segment CPC, you have a better understanding of who is converting with each segment and what you can do. Even if California traffic has a higher conversion rate than New York traffic, if most control over CPC visitors, then it's more interesting to to know that California CPC traffic actually has a lower conversion rate than New York CPC traffic, and you can act accordingly. We'll show as we go on. But to help build on the understanding of what kinds of segments exist within your web traffic, within Google Analytics, identified 3 types of segments: visit and ad segments. Is a group of visitors who have some quality about themselves or the way they got to your site. Some quality before they arrived on your site is the key idea here. And on one or more visitor qualities, you can learn about what visitors do once they arrive on your site. So qualities that you can investigate: what region or country or city they're from, what language their browser is set to, what source sent them to your website, if they've been there before, if this is their first time, and what hour of the day they arrived. Again, these are qualities before or as they arrive on your site, before they've actually started their site visit. Investigate based on what technology you use to reach your site, or even if you have AdWords linked, what specific elements of your AdWords SEM campaigns sent visitors to your site. And again, we'll talk about what it means to pivot on one of these dimensions. Some early examples, key segments within those dimensions. So for example, within region, you could be looking for the segment of visitors who are from the West Coast, in which you identify visitors from California, Washington, and Oregon. Along the dimension of ad content, you could be looking at the segment of just those visitors who came through your recent promotional ad copy. You could be for the segment of visitors or the group of visitors who all came during the work hours of the day, so 9 through 2 p.m. in this example, or early work hours at least. We'll be looking at the segment of your visitors who specifically came through what you classify as social traffic. Not all of these segments come automatically. Some of them require some configuration. We'll talk about that throughout this series. But generally, these visitor segments identify characteristics of a visitor before your site. And once you've applied or pivoted around this segment, you can learn more about what these types of visitors do once they arrived on your site. Are visit segments. And visit segments are visitors who shared some sort of common experience while on your site, regardless of where they came from or how they got there. By picking more visit qualities, you can understand what qualities of a visitor are likely to send traffic that engages with your site in a specific way. So specific examples, you could pivot around visitors who used your internal site search while on your site, who saw certain pages or even landed on certain pages. Certain events or custom variables, both of which require additional page tags to be activated, so not all accounts will see that. Or on the types of visitors who purchase certain products or back within a certain number of days to purchase, and any e-commerce needs to be activated through the use of page level tags. They just not come automatically. Of visit segments to pivot around would be visitors who landed on a specific promotional landing page, played a video if you've defined that action with an event, visitors logged in as opposed to not logged in, what media or what geographies sent visitors who are logging in, and again, needs to be defined with tags. With site search, it's helpful to analyze sometimes what keywords are sending traffic who ended up using your site search functionality. It might indicate that that keyword actually didn't send to the right page. The identified are action segments. If you measure group visitors along common dimensions, these segments group visitors along common metrics. And action segments are visitors who all behave in a certain way and therefore have common performance metrics. These visitors who meet or miss performance benchmarks that you've set around metrics such as goal conversion rate or pages per visit, and identify where those visitors came from and what they can do on your site. Some common metrics to pivot around are visitors who have spent a certain amount of time on your site, who didn't bounce, who may be or returning, visitors who spent a certain time on each page or were triggered a certain number of events, visitors who did not complete a goal or specific type of goal, or visitors who spent a certain amount on your site if you have e-commerce set up. are some specific examples of segments to pivot around. The example is visitors who do not bounce. To land on one page and leave immediately before viewing any other pages. And so you either bounced or did not bounce. It is a 0-1 equation in this example. Visitors who refined an internal site search more than twice, which means they were highly ineffective but dedicated to finding something within your site and may necessitate a review of your internal search functionality. The third identifies the group of visitors who spent more than $100 in revenue with an e-commerce purchase. Who completed at least one goal that you've identified on your site, greater than 0, at least 1. Dive into the Google Analytics account for the Analytics blog. Do our analysis there, and I'll remind you that this information in some cases is not always ideal, since a blog does not necessarily reflect the most common Google Analytics user, but we'll be trying to teach to some of the fundamental concepts with the report suite. New version. If you haven't yet watched the introducing the new version of Google Analytics, keep in mind that all visitors have the ability to access the new version in a new version link when they log into Google Analytics. You can see, because I'm in the version, I have a version link. But if you were to log in directly, you may need to click on new version before you can get into your account. We can go right to the location report, which is formerly known as Map Overlay. I'm navigating just a bit fast. Again, most of the navigational concepts within Google Analytics were discussed in the last session. So do bear with me, or pause this video and go back to the video of navigating or introducing the new version of GA. So what we do is just view segments along this dimension. The dimension we're looking at is country and territory. The available segments, the top 10 are listed here. We have 185 segments that we could view. The drop-down menu if we wanted to see more. The analysis is to view that, yes, we have segments that represent this dimension, and that their performance differs according to the metrics. And of course, we can explore our more meaningful metrics, such as goals. What are the conversion rates? How do the metrics differ among segments? You can do, when you're talking about quick insights and quick analysis, is do what's called simple segmentation. So I view a different dimension and the different segments with dimension appear. But very fast analysis, or very lightning speed analysis, as it claims to teach, what we'll do is click into a distinct segment. For this example, we'll be using the United States. And here, looking, instead of an entire data set, we're looking just at the U.S. You can see here that this segment analyzer will always remind you of what percentage of your visits you're looking at. This is it's about 22% of our Google blog visits. So with the U.S., we further dimension, and now we're looking at the dimension of region. These are the segments that are encapsulated in that. But to stop there, one of the powerful but subtle tools within analytics is what's known as the complex segmentation tool. It's on the other link. You'll find it in nearly every report. And what it allows you to do is, within this segment of U.S. visitors, again, that's what they have in common. They're all from the U.S. And what other aspects of these visitors are available for review? So when you click the link, you'll be presented with 4 categories that reflect our visit suite, and each categories will allow you to view other dimensions of the segment. So, for example, if we wanted to know, well, what language are the browsers set to from people from the U.S., we'll be looking at it for the U.S. only, not for all visitors, what language the browser is set to. And of course, it reflects that this is most English-speaking languages. We don't have to stop there. We'll skip technology for now, but you could say, well, what sources is the U.S. from? I know what my top sources are in general. I want to know just my top sources from the U.S. So it's very important to start changing these dimensions to things that you can control. And the idea is that within the U.S., 22% of visitors, those top sources could look different for the UK, could look different for other language-speaking countries. We've got many people coming direct, obviously very strong brand presence, a number of people coming from Google, what looks to be a manually set source of Google.com, the search engine, feed. further for the top keywords, and this is particularly helpful if you want to know what the top keywords are within a specific country or even a specific city. As long as you get that segment, these other dimensions about it. So we'll show that example in just a moment. But it can be helpful to analyze what are the top keywords for a specific segment, what are the top ad contents for a specific segment, landing pages. And again, there's two ways to navigate through this. You can either search if you do know exactly the dimension you're looking for, or you can simply expand these little carets to understand what you're able to analyze by. So this is a complex segmentation tool. I'm going to show you one more example of it in location before showing a few other features. So again, we set the location report. We went to the U.S. and analyzed other dimensions. Now let's look at a specific city. So just take things up a bit to better understand what's going on with those visitors, where they came from, and how their traffic might be reflected. We've got the metrics along our Hanoi visitors, and I'm actually going to change that to goal set just to make it more relevant. And language our Hanoi visitors are set to. Do we need to consider multiple blogs for whatever reason? Fortunately, here a vast majority have them set to English, but no more. How are they here? And what words are they using? And does that differ from other cities or other reasons that we could analyze? So what we may need to do at this point is export this list. And again, if we want to export the entire list, we may need to expand it. And then cities and export those lists and do some offline comparison. That our brand is strong. More people are using FeedBurner or RSS feeder in this region than they were in the U.S. And our Google visitors are far lower than our organic Google visitors than they were in the U.S. And we can analyze what keywords are people most responsive to in this city, what campaign people most responsive to, ad contents, how does that change by region. Here is first slide that we're interested in, or dive into it by clicking, learn more about that dimension, the complex segmentation tool. Find segments. One is just to look down the list, change this, expand the number of rows, and simply view the segment based on the metrics that you want to analyze by. To do a quick search, and of course we see Russia right here. And when searched along the dimension of country, search for Russia. We can search the little X there. The advanced table search, so the last search we did, you can see that applied there. Change this to where the goal conversion rate is greater than, for this example, we use 50%. So it does actually use the number, not the, it's not a percent 0.50. You actually use 50, or trying to find above. Again, we have a very light conversion, which is to say more than one page or more than 2 pages per visit. Show me all the rows with more than 50% conversion rate. You can see a significantly different list here. All conversion rates are above 50%. Great way of using the advanced filter. And you can see number of metrics that you can filter by, and what you're doing is saying, show me the number of rows where this element reflects the rule. So bounce rate is less than 20%, for example. Very few sources where the bounce rate is less than 20%. It's usually very low traffic countries who have a high conversion rate. So let's check that. Back to a more relevant metric. Conversion rate is greater than 50%. Here is showing you how to do primary segment analysis. Literally look at a specific dimension, which you identify the dimension through the report you've chosen. You either analyze by looking down the list of segments. You can search simply for a specific segment you know you want to review. You can do an advanced table search just to find certain segments that reflect a rule to apply. But these are all identified segments. And we go into a segment, you can drag on that segment, complex segmentation tool to view other dimensions of this segment. So presents 8.5%, much lower than the US is 22%. But again, we can find out what ad content did people in Spain most likely to respond to, or source, and sometimes the processing might be a little slow as we move through the beta phase of this interface. But what are these visitors most likely to respond to? And again, it's slightly different from our US traffic. Our brand is less strong, though stronger than it is in Vietnam. RSS feeder is still the most effective way to send out traffic, although Twitter making a much more presence here than it may have been in Vietnam. So I want to show a couple more examples of this in other reports, but right again, what we're trying to establish is how to identify segments, and you do that through searching or scanning. Get into segment once you isolate a segment. Once you're there, and that question is answered by, well, what else can I know about this segment? Now that I isolated the campaign segment of Blogger RSS feeder, or Google Analytics Blogspot RSS. If you wanted to know, well, what content are people going to most often with this? Feature. Content are people wanting to know most about? Just to wrap back up, I'm looking at something about the visitor before they got to the site. This is the thing they saw. And what this row number 1 represents is a multi-dimensional segment. The first dimension is campaign, and it's from this RSS feeder blog. The second dimension is ad content, and it's specifically the Google Feed Fetcher ad content as opposed to other ad content, right? That kinds of questions that you can ask once you identify a segment. You identify a segment by drilling into it. But it can have more than one dimension to it. So we have a tool called the secondary dimension tool here, where in a single, let's say, for example, what the exercise I want to try is to click into each campaign and then do segment by ad content. Well, for each I wanted to analyze that, I'd have to click campaign, segment by content, export, click on cache, click on this, campaign, ad content, export, segment by click in a new GA blog, segment by ad campaign, ad content. You can see you have to go through this repetitive process. That if you know what you're going to be segmenting by next, and you're prepared to reckon with the amount of data you'll get, use what's called the secondary dimension. And applying that second level of dimensioning right in the primary report. Once finished, and the secondary dimension comes up. So what here, not set, not set. This is a single dimension where neither the campaign has been manually set nor the ad content has been manually set. If you're looking at the campaign dimension, not all visitors have a campaign dimension. In fact, most of them do not. Most of them are just visitors from either organic or free or untagged sources. So we can ignore those. That is a segment of visitors. This is the next segment of visitors that we should find interesting. Visitors who came through this campaign and this ad content. You can see this campaign comes up over and over again, but with content. So what can we do this? Well, we can expand this and export. Or we can simply do the analysis within the interface and say, well, for my that I've set, what ad content drives best performance based on where it came from. So ad content that you're using across multiple campaigns can be really helpful to analyze what ad content seems to match the best the campaign the best, because some ad contents, even if it's the same variations you're testing in different campaigns, some ad content will perform better in some campaigns than others. If you have the same campaign names, and you can see I X that out, but I'll show that again. If you have the same campaign names from multiple sources, for example, you have the same campaign names in Google and Bing and others, you can a second dimension of source and see the same campaign and forms based on the different sources. So this allows for a more specific segment that you'd like to review. And as I mentioned, the more specific the segment you're looking at, the better you'll be able to make decisions to influence that segment. So the segment needs just one row, even though it includes 2 dimensions. And that's the tool. In Pages, because it is fairly distinct in the content section. Some pages within site content. You can see here, these are my segments. Visitors who came to this page, this is the home page. Visitors come to this, to that, right? So what you do is you can isolate that segment by clicking into it. And know more about it, such as, well, what geography is the visitors to this page, or what technology does the technology influence the way the visitors are perceiving this page? So, for example, some resolutions might adjust to this page better than as well as others, and therefore you might have a higher bounce rate with certain screen resolutions. You can see the lowest bounce rate exists in the most common dimension of screen resolution. This is but a higher bounce rate for some other resolutions and lower for others. So it may be worth testing those resolutions to understand, well, is it coming through the way that I imagine? Does the resolution really have an effect on the page? It's just something else about the user. Instead of using this complex dimension tool, click on the navigation summary at the top. And this is effectively isolating this segment still. So we're still looking at this segment. People who are looking at this page represents about 10% of our viewers. Now is question like previous page, right? This is another dimension about visitors on this page. What was their next page, right? So this is in a very large sense of another dimension of this specific segment. So Explorer, a tremendous amount about this specific page. Actually, the landing page, I think that was the other report I was looking for. We can isolate a specific segment. This is the same page we were looking at before, new Google Analytics Overview reports. Number of entrances are the metrics we're going to analyze this by. Segment. You'll notice this is a little bit different. This is not the segment of everybody who's looked at this page, the segment of everybody who's entered at this page. They have to have come from outside the site. So from all of the landings, this represents about 15% of all total landings, even though 10% of all total page views, landings are specific. The segment, we can go to entrance paths and once what was the next page? If you have readership, they see a new Google Analytics Overview page. Many of them searched through a label and then through one of these pages and a bit additional insight on this page. Still looking at the same segment, 14.5% of total entrances. We can say what sources sent visitors to this page. We can say what keywords, when they did send a keyword, what keyword traffic to this page. And again, does it send a keyword? In fact, very few set a keyword for this one, but you can at least start to understand the sources. Ad content. We're most likely to send visitors who viewed this page. Again, very intelligent analysis, very deep analysis, done very, very quickly through a complex segmentation tool, or simply the concept of identifying a single segment and then pivoting around that segment to know more dimensions that could be meaningful to you. So this concept of pivoting, you identify and pin down a segment, and then by pinning that down, you're looking at other aspects of that segment of visitors. Secondary dimensions, what can we do with this? Well, the concept here is, again, to identify segments and the performance of that segment so that you can then either or make a more specific segment. So one way of doing this is to go to each report and then select the segment you want to identify and then learn more about it. However, another way to pivot around segments is to simply use the advanced segment tool. So I'm going to review and show you segments. And this is familiar to those of you who have used advanced segments in the past, but just to review, what is advanced segments looking at? By all, we're looking at all visitors. That is the segment, which is to say not a segment at all. It's simply all your visitors. However, what we were really concerned about analyzing were new visitors. We could apply that segment and navigate the reports just looking at new visitors, visitors that was their first time within the date range you're looking at. Or what you're really concerned about, and you can see the segment here, as you actually, in just a quick point, as you see through the reports, you'll note that you're still looking at the same segment, and this is one if you've got the right segment, is to find the report where those visitors live and confirm that that's all you're looking at. So what we're really concerned about is search traffic. You apply that segment, and then navigate through the reports, do the analysis only visitors who matter to you. Now again, why is this important? Well, just because one segment appears to be doing better than another doesn't mean that there's not a specific aspect or dimension of that segment that's really its performance. So you see that New York appears to be doing better than New York traffic at longer conversions, but what's really driving the performance or rollover is your traffic. And so it's been analyzed within search the performance is, or how the performance differs, so that you can upon that. One of the easiest ways to start getting involved in advanced segments is to simply start clicking around and comparing these segments. You also benchmark these segments against all visits that you compare segments. So it's it's highly recommended to pick segments that are meaningful in their comparison, returning, paid versus non-paid, and compare those two segments. And you can comparing them here. You move around. You should constantly be able to compare the metrics. Out the standard report into reports where this may be more insightful. Location, you can quickly see what is the performance of new versus returning visitors in the various regions. It wasn't popular yet, but you'd have to do some serious segmentation analysis, such as go into United States and then segment by new versus returning. This isn't even data that was otherwise available in the interface. So what we're looking at here is whether there a significant difference between this returning performance in each case and what we do about that. So if Spain and Italy are seeing significant performance differences, and particularly within new, the new visitors seem to be the most likely to click in. Well, what we can know about this? Since it's a blog, it's very likely that old visitors don't feel the need to click through multiple pages since they come regularly. And if they're feeling a little bit more exploratory and they'd like to figure out, is there any content that I should be reviewing? The same for other important traffic sources or content, and better understand how do these segments compare. And it's certainly not impossible to find what are the segments that are most meaningful for me. For example, if you have goal conversion set up, which you should have, choose visits with conversions. If you have e-commerce set up, you can choose visits with transactions and say, well, what are the visits like who send me conversions? What sources are sending me the most conversions? What landing pages convert often? Landing page is one, or if you wanted to know conversion rate by landing page, you could compare all visits against visits with conversions. Comparison to get a % difference, or you could export this and simply divide visits by conversions by all visits and know that this landing page has a probably 80% conversion rate. This landing page, however, has a 60% conversion rate. This page has 60. This landing page only has a 25% landing conversion rate. So although this equation needs to be done offline, or I'll show you some other ways that you could possibly perform this, these advanced segments can provide a tremendous amount of insight by comparing segments to each other. If segmentation is analysis, then your goal is twofold. One, identify the most important or interesting segments. That doesn't mean the best segments, but the most interesting ones. And then two, compare the interesting segments so you realize the delta. You want to know the difference between segments' performance so that you can optimize better, or push the better segment even further and optimize the worser segment to perform better. Those are the default segments. I'm going to back to all visits to bring it back to the but what we can do is create custom segments to fill in the gaps where they otherwise might exist. By this, we can see the created a number of segments here. You can create a new custom segment here, but that'll actually bring you to the screen. I'm going to take you to it in a moment. This is like a cooking show where I've got the meal prepared before we walk in. If we want to know visits with conversions, that's one thing, but let them know also visits without conversions. So new. And again, the idea here is you name it something obvious, you include, and what it's doing is saying, out of all my visitors that meet this rule. So all of your dimensions and metrics, and this is why it's important to get familiar with the complete segmentation tool, because it starts to introduce you to the names of these. So you can either scroll all of them, you can start typing. I like to type things like total, since the total is interesting. But know exactly what you're looking for, you can type that in there as well. I suggest getting familiar with these. Even though it's a long list, they should be relatively reasonable to understand. The goals, visits, where total goal conversions equals 0. So again, you're analyzing in visits. For every visit, show me the one where a goal completion equals 0. So they did not convert. You can preview the segment, or you can simply save it. And segment loads. We're going to times to reset the. We want to visits without conversions to visits with conversions. We want to remove it. We're going to press apply, and show us how do landing pages without conversions compare to the ones that are with. That about the total. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't see a little bit of sampling. And what does sampling mean? Well, that just means that we, for the sake of getting you this report quickly, we take a statistically significant sample of your entire visit set, and visitors, the percent of your visitors that is meaningful to the whole. So these numbers might not be 100% accurate. What you're really looking for here are trends, not the most accurate numbers. And you sacrifice accuracy for speed with Google Analytics, but we think that as we continually improve our algorithms for sampling, you'll put more and more value without having to worry about, did I get the exact number? And you'll be much more excited to see how the trends perform. So this is simply a split conversion rate, how many did convert as opposed to didn't convert. When you apply this to sources, such as all or you can start to understand, well, what does it who didn't convert, what do they look like? What were the distinguishing marks? What geographies did they come from? What traffic sources did they come from? It's with and without conversions is just the start of complementary segment analysis. Complementary segment analysis is what I refer to when you have two more segments, whole, so visits without and visits with, right? So there are search visitors and non-search visitors, right? That comprises everybody. New, returning. Those are complementary segments that tell a story about the entire pool of your visitors. Custom segment, right? You click on the custom segment, you pick what you want to analyze by, and then you create the rule that meets it. These can get increasingly complex, but starting light, right? What I first suggest doing is finding a report that includes a segment that you want to know more about, right? So we have the landing page that we thought was interesting, the new Google Analytics overview, and what I'll do is just copy that, go and create an advanced segment, custom segment, and again, even to double check it, I'm looking right at this dimension. This is the segment I want right here. I want to capture that and learn more about it. So land the dimension, so I'm just going to go up here, contains, and it populates you're looking at in most cases. So if we this new GA overview landing page, this might be a very specific segment, but see it must have worked. It represents about 14% of the traffic, and what you are looking for is here are all visits. That's what we saw before. But a landing page captures only visitors who've landed on that page and none other. So we'll go ahead and save all visits to segment. It's up to you to determine what metrics make a segment meaningful or interesting to you. And there you can see there's some cases where landing pages are similar but have an extra parameter. Even still, it's still meaningful to me. You can see the whole life cycle of this segment, certainly at least to me. Other reports, you can say, well, what traffic sources? Again, this is similar to the analysis we did before while we isolated that segment. What traffic sources sent visits guy, that traffic source, what was ad content, and this goes a little bit longer to load just because we're looking at such a distinct segment, and the rest of all of these reports come pre-aggregated as we process them for quick review. Whenever you're outside of the aggregation, it can take a little bit longer to load. Since we created a custom segment, we can't possibly have aggregated for all custom segments that are available. So as these load, you can just see that what we're looking at is sources that sent traffic to that landing pages, campaigns that sent traffic to that landing page. Keywords or ad content. You could that traffic to that landing page as opposed to just the paid keywords. Tremendous amount of analysis. Just really, I mean, industry speeds compared to the depth of analysis that you're performing on this data, and such a small data set at that. We're looking now at just 0.01% of all your visitors, and yet we're able to quickly dive in and say, for that specific landing pages, what were the organic keywords that sent traffic? In social traffic, I can say, well, how did that perform, and what did it look like to other types of social efforts? So if it were Twitter and Facebook, just tremendous amounts of data about what you're trying to explore, all in one place. Type of segment for you, just to give you another sense of how to create custom segments. The easy part with custom segments is find the segment you want to analyze and just recreate that, and then just start exploring other reports and see what you can know. You know, created a segment, start to explore other reports, and do other segmentation and other complex segmentation, and as I've showed you. So if we wanted to create a custom segment, we can call what I call a tail segment. This is something where it's a kind of a group of similar segments. So branded keywords is the segment we want to create. So is what we're looking at. And you can say it contains Google. And well, there are lots of keywords that contain Google, but I want to know about all of them as a group. So if we put that segment, you can see only about 8% of our visitors came through branded keywords. But well, I know that there are actually other want to know about. So there's Google, visitors who came to the keyword analytics. Analytics. Or visitors who came to the keyword. Let's see if there's of analytics that I want to know about. Types of keywords. So this tailored segment is similar, one dimension, similar. So right there's misspellings, right? G-O-O-G-L or G-O-G-L-E-G-L. It's called a pipe. You can see this little, looks like L. It's actually a / for those of you who have a PC, although on a Mac I think it's a similar one. Probably Apple / anyway, the pipe means or. So you can create as many or rules as you'd like, or just put the pipe and misspelling and analyze that segment. Third segment, branded keywords. There are others that I could show you. For example, multi-dimensional segments. minutes left, so I might just wrap up with custom reports. But again, the idea here is that you're trying to pivot around a segment that's meaningful to you. Either they've done something that you like, or they did something you didn't like, or they did something you don't understand and you need to learn more about. You isolate what you can, learn a little bit more, and then can say, well, it's not just branded keywords that I'm interested in. It's actually branded organic keywords. So if I edited this, said it came through Google, and they medium organic, not paid. Or it's actually keywords people who came from a branded keyword through paid. Right? What we're doing is continually narrowing down this segment. What we're going to do is influence their behavior in some way. So let's say we were buying paid search, so Google CPC from the US or Google CPC from California. We want to know what our brand traffic just from California or even just San Francisco is like. Right? So, a tremendous amount about our visitors by honing down a very, very, very specific segment and performing an analysis on that. So what do we know about these? Well, what landing pages were they going to? What pages were they looking at? How many of these people were converting? My internal site search, any events or custom tables. There's almost an endless amount of information you can know about them. What did San Francisco visitors respond to? What content were they most responsive to? What campaigns were they most engaged with? Just data that you can start to analyze as you hone down specific segments. And they can be single-dimensional segments, they can be default segments, they can be multidimensional, hyper-complex segments. The idea is that you're exploring and isolating specific segments and then trying to know what else you can about them. To wrap up with custom reports. Last session, you noticed that custom reports have moved. The tab is now up here. You can create multiple custom reports. You can check them very easily. You can them with increasing visibility, and there are certain features that will continue to roll out, such as being able to share with other profiles. But if you just want to a specific custom report with someone, you can do that by copying the URL below. So what are some good custom reports to start with? The first one I like to talk about is the simple custom report. And that some of these reports, by the way, will not have much or any data in them because of the data in our Google Analytics blog account, but have some data. In some cases, not very much or not very meaningful. But the first simple custom report. And what is? Well, it's strictly that you isolate one dimension that you want to know more about, and you simply list as few metrics as that person needs to tell the story that they need to know, right? Trying to actually give less data, not more, and you give them what they need to know. So you can even go by other tabs to give their data, but again, the idea is that you're making them work the least amount for it. You don't even, for simple reports, you don't even want to allow them to click into to do other analysis because, again, they might not know exactly what they're looking at. And this is just a high level or medium level, I would say, overview of what they need to know. So you can see what the guts look like. This is what a custom report looks like. You give it a name. We'll talk about in just a moment. You give each tab a name, and then we'll talk about what a flat table is in a moment as well. You give the metric group a name if you want, but what you're looking at is, you pick from the list, scroll down, you can type in, you can know the metric and look for. So if what to know are this and tokens and convert. Three metrics. Select the dimensions you want to analyze. You want them to analyze by. There are a few new ones you hadn't seen before, such as date, month, week, and depending on what metrics you've chosen. You allow them to drill because it starts to get into a complex custom report. They'll have to know more about this process. But that said, you can share these custom reports, you can export them, and increasingly share these around your organization or your client's organization as needed. A simple custom report, complex custom report will allow you to do multiple levels of analysis. And what this will let you do is do the analysis you would have done with something like the complex segmentation tool. Here, and last time we took, for an example, we could have chosen a keyword and then used the other complex dimension tool to select a landing page. Well, a complex custom report will help you skip that step. From keyword, drilling in, only the concerned about, we can see directly the landing page, and then go page, and instead of using the segmentation tool, we can just see what keyword. The idea here is that you're skipping the step of using the complex dimension tool. How do we do this? Let's click on SEO analysis page. We add another dimension. And what we've done here is most interested in the way that we'd like to drill through our data, and we showed that before by drilling, to drill on a single segment, and then you used the tool to learn more about it. However, here you can see that the tool is not necessary. Filters. Well, what does a filter do? It allows you to limit what segment of data you start with, so that you're getting data matter. So this is SEO analysis. We only need organic, right? And apply that filter. Necessary traffic. That's the start of a complex segment report, and this data was available in the interface, right? You could have gone into a keyword and segmented by landing page. Some data is not really available through the interface. Complex custom reports, there's unique complex custom reports. If you remember, you might not have noticed, but there's no segment a specific way to look at the dimension of hour for a specific segment within the normal interface. So if we know what day is FeedBurner sending me the most traffic, and should I be aware of this to optimize accordingly? We're going to get that information in just a moment here, although again it's going to be encrypted, so you may need to back it out. And based on the actual day. So you can export this, transform this data as needed, and look at another way. This looks like now we've got hour of day. We also have just hour, which would not in the day, it would just show you hour individually. And we've got the metrics that we're interested in. This was not available otherwise. We can analyze by looking at specific sources or specific geographies and say, well, what hours do those people, is that dimension sending me traffic? Is that segment sending me traffic? What are the hours that are sending me the traffic? And what are the hours that are sending me the best traffic? Right? I didn't have goal conversion rate, but it would have been very easy to put that there. So it's just a fantastic way to know, well, what hours of the day are my tweets working best? The day should I be launching campaigns or dropping the most money into a paid campaign? Right? The day, do certain cities or certain states respond best to and targeting campaigns based on the hours that they are performing the best? Report, very powerful. And how easy it was to put this together. As long as you have control over what metrics are available in GA, and not every dimension can be mapped to every metric. Not every dimension can drill into every other dimension. Pretty darn close. Since you're working with a database, unlike many other tools, you can segment your data basically any way that was meaningful to you. Real briefly to cap this training off, but just tremendous. I hope you've at least had impressed upon you what it's like to deep within data, looking at minuscule percentages of your total data set, and then working within them. This is just tremendously powerful information. So here you can see for flat tables, one example that I like to use is very common is to merge cost sources. So you can import cost sources from other marketing campaigns into GA. You should look for opportunities to export your data of GA and map it to cost sources individually. So we've been running display campaigns through something like DFA or AdWords even, but DFA are content networks. Then we can say, show me the visitors who've come through display. And we're going to go to keywords first, and change it from Explorer to Flat Table, and set dimensions that are meaningful for us. So in this place, we want to do campaign and keyword, and this one, campaign and ad content. You'll notice this is like secondary dimensions. You're still at a single segment of your visitors, notably campaign and ad content, and you're defining what metrics you want to measure them by. Now, display advertising to send people to the GA blog, I'm going to take that filter off. But what it allows you to do is save this report, export your cost center information in the same way, for example, with campaign and keyword, and simply go along the list, mapping it to the. And this might take a little bit of time, but it can be extremely effective in knowing, well, for whatever I paid for this campaign and keyword, how many of those people visited, turned into those people converted, what was the conversion rate, what was my cost per conversion, right? Commerce, you could even know what was my return on ad spend, so long as you're able to effectively map keywords or campaign and ad copy for a display campaign to your cost source information. So flat tables, again, each of these are segments. They're each like a secondary dimension that you've added. Very powerful for mapping the cost data or mapping to other cost sources or just doing general widespread analysis. And again, you can export up to 500 rows at a time. Go to the next page, export 500 more too. Just a very helpful little way to campaign performance. And this is, again, sortable, analyzable by most of the standard ways you would want to do this. Hopefully you've gotten a sense of what the types of visitor segments are and how you can quickly identify segments within Google Analytics, how to use custom reports and advanced segments to better distinguish of your visitors, and how to generate positive use of the extremely advanced within Google Analytics. And I end with the top slides so that you can review here. Our next session, showing multi-channel media, will allow you to better understand how campaign tracking works within Google Analytics and how it'll set you up for some future feature launches that are very exciting. Include a deeper analysis of how to optimize for AdWords and SEM, as well as for display and other non-direct response media, such as social or possibly even mobile advertising. We'll talk about how to measure customer engagement by using the full analysis tracking feature set within GA that includes event tracking, custom variables, and others. And then wrap up with analytics partnerships opportunities. Hopefully having you all live, or at least having you watch the recorded version of the sessions. Thanks so much, and do have a great day.